In the space of the last couple of years, had a beautiful wife, beautiful family, won a grand final, had all these plans, everything was going perfect had this beautiful, beautiful life. And in an instant, that's gone. You sort of start thinking to yourself, holy hell, what the hell's happening here? So very harrowing time, very challenging time for me. All these, roller coaster of emotions, why, what happened, anger, frustration, all this different things, Jake, that happened during that time. So I got back to New Zealand, had the funeral service. I was probably halfway through the season by the time I got back to Warrington. And I got back home and Daryl was there, he said, listen, T, I've organised for you to go and see a counsellor. And I said, well, what's that for, Daryl? And he said, you've been through a traumatic time. I said, no, I'll be all right, Daryl. Thanks for that, mate. But, I'm all good. I'm not too bad. I don't need to go and do any of that stuff. He says, T, listen, I think you need to go and talk to someone around what's happened and how you feel. I didn't really drink much. I was always quite fit. And I'd probably have a beer 2 or 3 times a year with my dad and my brothers when I came home. But I started drinking really heavily. I never slept for about 3 months. I couldn't sleep. Missed training sessions, don't turn up. It was a whole raft of things. And about 3 months later, got a knock on the door. Daryl was there, came and took me to this counsellor, psychologist. And even when I got to the office that day, I didn't want to go in that office. I didn't want to go and see the psychologist. I was there. And I had these thoughts, you don't really know who I am. You don't know where I come from. You don't know what I've been through. How would you know? But I went into the office because Daryl made me, and I sat down and I was in there for about 40 minutes. But halfway through the session, I felt this massive weight lifted off my shoulders. Felt this whole huge sense of relief. And started crying in the session. And I remember when I walked out of that session, I gave Daryl a big hug and I said, mate, thanks for that. I really, really needed that, in a way. And I guarantee you this now, Jake, if I didn't go and do that, I'll tell you right now, I wouldn't be in the position that I am today. Losing the love of my life, someone that I loved immensely, the mother of my children, to have all that gone and taken from you in an instant is probably the biggest hole, that I've ever been. So, losing a leg, that's nothing. I know that if you keep your heart right and you do the right thing, the sun will come out and shine again.